Apple just called this the broadest design update ever. So are they overselling it, or is it actually an awesome Apple ecosystem upgrade? WWDC 2025 just dropped, and we've got a complete visual overhaul across every single Apple device, a new naming system that ditches version numbers for calendar years, and some genuinely clever AI features that, well, they might actually be genuinely useful this time. I'm sorry, but here's the thing. I've been burned by Apple's revolutionary claims before. So is Apple OS 26 really the game changer they've promised, or could this be another pretty facelift with a fancy new name? Hi, it's Simon. Today we've got to dive deep into what caught my eye from Apple's 2025 WWDC announcements. We'll cover the massive redesign that they've called liquid glass, why the iPad is suddenly feeling a little more Mac-like, and the AI features that might actually change how you use your phone daily. Spoiler alert, some of this is genuinely impressive, but maybe not all of it lives up to the hype. Before we judge if these updates matter, we need to understand what Apple's actually changed and why they're numbering everything differently. So let's start with the elephant in the room. Apple's ditched their traditional naming scheme. No more iOS 18, Mac Sequoia. Everything is now numbered by the year it's coming out. So we've got iOS 26, macOS 26, iPadOS 26, Vision, but you get the idea. I think this is a little bit like what we see car companies do all the time. And honestly, I think it does make sense. But the real question is whether there's actually some substance behind this rebrand. So that headline feature is what Apple's calling liquid glass, their new design language that's coming across all the platforms. Now, before you roll your eyes at another Apple buzzword, I actually think this is more than visual fluff. What I'm seeing is Apple finally matching form and function in a design language change. And they haven't done this for a long time. I really love how they're matching the edges of the interface elements now with the rounded corners of the modern hardware. So everything feels cohesive between kind of physical device and screen. Now, I think the liquid part refers to how the elements respond dynamically to touch, stretching and flowing in ways that actually give you tactile feedback and adapt, say, on the iPhone screen for your clock to images, but also that lovely semi-transparent mirror feel that you can see through. Well, it's not a mirror if you can see through it, but you know. The cleaner, more minimal look means less visual clutter, and crucially, despite all the rumours, they're not changing icon shapes. All of those custom icon packs we love still work perfectly. Speaking of which, if you want to take your setup to the next level, I'd argue my minimal icon packs and covers really will look great with the new OS design languages, so check them out at bettercreating.com, because yeah, whilst I do kind of think that transparent icon language does look pretty cool, I don't think it does as well at blending the iconography and typefaces of every icon to give you a really coherent look. Oh, and you can avoid those notification badges. But here's where it gets interesting. The redesign isn't just about looking pretty. Apple's claiming their silicon is now powerful enough to enable these new dynamic interactions without battery drain. So the real test will be whether this translates to genuine better usability, or if it's just eye candy that gets old after a week. And this leads us to a couple of highlights that appear across the various OS, which are actually kind of low key, but with big quality life benefits. And it starts with the phone app, which by the way is coming fully as an app to macOS and iPadOS with a bunch of other cool continuity upgrades, but more on the Mac in a bit. Onto these low-key iPhone wins. So Apple Intelligence got the usual stage time right at the top of the keynote, but honestly, that we need more time to reach our high-quality standards line tells me they're still figuring a few things out. What's more interesting though are the practical improvements hiding in the details that really do look properly impressive. The camera app finally gets the overhaul it deserved. Simplified swiping between photos and video modes and aspect ratio changes that don't require diving into menus. This is the kind of quality of life improvement that sounds boring but saves you time every single day. And Safari looks great now. I really think this is going to be cool. It flows content right to the screen edges with a floating liquid glass tab over the top that shrinks out of the way. And again, sounds minor, but it puts your content front and center where it belongs. But here are the features that genuinely caught my attention. Call screening that might actually work. The system apparently answers unknown calls in the background, transcribes what they say, and then shares that first sentence with you as a message so you can decide whether you want to pick up. Too many spam calls? This really is ingenious. Second, the phone app now actually detects hold music and can essentially handle being on hold for you, I think. Small feature, huge improvement to the quality of life. Third, and this one's buried but brilliant, unknown messages get filtered in a similar way into a separate inbox, keeping your main messages clean while showing time-sensitive stuff like your table being ready at a restaurant. These aren't flashy features, but I really do think that Apple are solving real daily annoyances. That's the kind of practical innovation I can get behind. So after years of AI hype, I think Apple are really building some tools that solve real-world problems. Let's skip past Genmojis combining with other Genmojis to make more Genmojis, and not the usual chat GPT integration stuff. Apple's doing something cleverer. Live translation is now built into messages, phone calls, and FaceTime. The demo showed real-time text subtitles during video calls across languages. Having worked with international teams and doing it at the moment, this could be genuinely transformative for global communication. And honestly, it feels like the groundwork for those Apple glasses we're all waiting for. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And here's another feature that caught my attention. Visual intelligence now works on your screen. You can now take a screenshot of anything, an event, a restaurant menu, a complex diagram, and you can immediately search for information, add events to your calendar, or ask questions about what you're seeing. And perhaps the big announcement for macOS, bar the same redesign, has to be around shortcuts and automations. Apple have now released intelligent actions that allow you to use Apple Intelligence to form shortcut actions, and they've added a new action that allows you to tap directly into the private cloud compute model. The example they shared was comparing your notes from a lecture to a transcription of it, and that seems like it could end up being really useful for students and people in meetings. This is a deep dive, I think, for most Mac users. All in all, this is AI that's actually contextually aware and useful, rather than just another chatbot. It's the difference between technology that works with your workflow versus technology that interrupts it or is just for fun. The question is whether these features will work reliably in the real world, or if they'll be like the old Siri, impressive in demos but frustrating in real life. So next, the iPad got the biggest overhaul ever, and it's looking very Mac-like. I've had these conversations for years. Can an iPad replace your MacBook? Well, iPadOS 26 is the closest we've been to seeing macOS on a tablet. We're talking proper windowing, menu bars, and file management that actually works much more like a computer. This means we're going to be able to resize windows freely instead of being stuck on that kind of semi-grid-like system. There are minimize and close buttons like on a Mac window, and this is huge. Each app now has a proper menu bar at the top, and the Files app finally feels like a really promising files system. Now you can drop folders into the dock that fan out to show your content, and you can set default apps for different file types to open them, and even manage everything with color tags, custom icons, and just see everything a bit more like you would on your computer. Perhaps the real game changer, background tasks. You can now export a video in Final Cut, for example, and continue using other apps while it processes. There's also studio quality audio recording promised through AirPods and local video recording on your video call app of choice. That essentially turns your iPad into a content creation machine. The question is, does this finally make the iPad a viable laptop replacement? We'll dive deeper into that in my next coming video, and spoiler alert, again, it's complicated but very promising. So the question remains, is this Apple's biggest update in a decade, or just another iterative refresh with some better marketing? Honestly, my friends, it's a bit of both. The liquid glass redesign, I think, does genuinely look thoughtful. It's not just pretty, it seems really functional. And the AI features, while limited, actually this time look like they're going to solve real-world problems instead of creating new ones or making nice pictures. And the iPad changes, I think, are the closest we've gotten to a true laptop replacement, and certainly a better workflow. But let's be realistic. This is still very much an Apple update. The core experience isn't revolutionized, it's refined. And I kind of think that's what most of us want these days. Whether that's enough for you depends on what you're actually looking for. The public beta drops in July, and the full release is coming this autumn. I think it's normally around September. So we'll have months to test whether these promises actually hold up in daily use. Let me know what your take is on all the new OS and releases in WWDC, and if it matches up to your expectations in the comments. And of course, if you want to make sure that your setup looks incredible with or without an update to this new design language, you've got to check out my icon and cover packs, and we'll make sure to release new versions later on in the year because, you know, people seem to like them. Okay, so we've covered the broad strokes here, but the iPad, I think, deserves a deeper dive. So get subscribed because I'll be doing a video on that very soon. But right now, unless you understand what makes a tablet worthwhile in the first place, you may just give up and stick to your laptop or not ever use the iPad you bought. So I recommend watching this video next on how to make the most of the iPad this year. And this one down here, well, apparently YouTube thinks you'll love it too. Get subscribed, click my face. I'll just see you on one of these videos. All right, bye.